listening to Cinema Spin. Hello, everybody. I am Matt.
And I'm Jason.
And welcome to another brand new episode of Cinema Spin.
Brand spanking new episode of Cinema Spin.
Jason, I'm sad.
You're sad, Matt? Tell me why.
Oh, it just seems like, we had to take we had to miss some of our uploads because we were sick.
Yes, there's been chaos.
It's kind of taken its toll on our numbers, and it's just like I thought we were making progress as far as growing, and now it feels like we've had a setback.
Oh no!
And what sucks about it is, it's really, what was the alternative?
Yeah,
it's not like we slacked off. We were
right. It wasn't our
and
fault.
It's serious business, right?
It's serious business, and it's a time of year when people, like me, are taking vacations, and It's also the cold and flu season and the COVID season and so on, right?
I guess it should be noted that we're not exactly reviewing blockbusters here either.
That's true. It's been really tough to come by popular movies. I think the Spider-Man movie was the last, sort of big
kind of the last
movie
hurrah of the year.
What hurts even more is that our constituency, our listenership, consists largely of our friends and family. And when you lose a big chunk of them, it's like your family is saying, no thanks.
Yeah, it's like a personal rejection.
It's personal. It's entirely personal, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So if you're out there and you're still listening, good for you. You're a stalwart. You're hanging in there. If you're out there and you're not listening, well, somebody who is listening is gonna have to pass the message on. But we're gonna try to recommit to getting everything done on Sunday nights and getting the uploads on time.
Yeah, I mean that's always our intention.
Yes,
I mean we live normal lives like everybody, so it's not going to be perfect.
That's true.
But hopefully, if we have a reason to not meet that, we'll be able to announce it ahead of time.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. Right.
And of course, we'll try to put that, if there would be anything that would be last minute, we'll try to put a message on some of our social media.
Yeah, right.
Because we're just, we're relentless about posting on social media.
Yes, we are all over social media. And by all over social media, I mean I tweet once a week to promote the when the podcast drops.
So just a little bit less often than you post your Wordle results.
Yes, like most Americans, I am addicted to Wordle. But luckily, it's only once a day.
I think that kind of sucks. I could do
Wordle?
I could do a few more. Two a day would be
great.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But then we'd all be hooked, right? It would be like opiates.
But let's get to our first review, I suppose.
Okay.
Tell us about it.
Okay. Well, we are catching up with, like we said, the new movies that are coming out every week are not necessarily things that excite us, but we are catching up now on some critically acclaimed movies from 2021, the kinds of movies that you're going to be hearing more and more about as critics make up their top 10 lists and as the awards go on and so on. And the movie we caught up to this week is a movie called Coda from 2021. So Coda, CODA, is an acronym meaning Children of Deaf Adults, and the movie is in broad strokes a pretty standard coming of age story. A teenager named Ruby is torn between her passion for singing and her obligations to her family, and ultimately has to decide if her life is going to be spent fulfilling her duties to her tribe or to herself. The twist here is that Ruby's parents and older brother are deaf. And the family fishing business, this takes place in Gloucester, Massachusetts, where fishing is life. The family fishing business is under fire from local bureaucrats. So in addition to the normal pressures put on teenagers, Ruby is needed by her parents to translate for them through these difficult times. So her dreams of going to college couldn't come at a worse time. All of this makes Coda sound like it's a deadly serious issue movie. And for this reason, frankly, earlier this year, I kind of avoided it. I heard, Children of Deaf Adults, and I thought this was going to be, a very serious sort of homework Oscar-y movie. Maybe with some self-righteous grandstanding about how we treat disabled people as, we treat disabled people as second-class citizens and so on. But that is not this movie. Instead, here we have a charming, moving Above all, very, very funny movie about an offbeat family full of eccentric characters who are not meant to stand for anything or represent any larger issue. They're just people leading very specific lives with specific problems, who don't have any magical answers. So they make mistakes and they bicker, and it all makes for a really wonderful movie about family, fishing, music, first loves, and occasionally the struggles of being deaf. So phrases like heartwarming and crowd pleaser come to mind, but all of that makes this feel like it's sort of a light and disposable kind of movie. Instead, it's enormously well written and well acted. And when I look back on the movies of 2021 and remember this one, it's gonna make me smile. If you're time and again, I'm asked by people. I'm known as my social groups as sort of the movie guy, and so people are coming up to me a lot. They hear a lot about movies, a lot of movies that have dropped on streaming or whatever, and they say, "Hey, what should I be watching? What should I be watching?" Right? And my answer now is Coda. If you're listening to this, stop what you're doing, get a free trial on Apple TV, and see this movie. You're gonna love it.
Wow, that was pretty clear.
There you go.
Where I think this movie has another disservice thrown at it, as much as you feared it would be serious and maybe overly self-righteous, I think the trailer, the way it's cut, kind of makes it almost seem like something Selena Gomez from Disney would be.
Yeah, exactly. You pointed the trailer out to me earlier this week and said, "Is this what we want to watch?" And I watched about half of it, and I'm like, "No. This makes it seem like it's for young adults."
Well, right. Well, the movie was on my radar because I saw it on some people's best of lists.
Yeah.
And it's nominated for a Critics' Choice Award.
Yeah.
So I kind of went through and reviewed what all these movies are about and saw, kind of basically seeing what their potential for our show would be.
Yeah.
Well, after watching that trailer, I sort of deemed it not very Jason-y.
Yes. About 10 seconds of that trailer, I thought this isn't very Jason-y, but I had heard other reviews.
So when it came time to watch this, I had a deal of skepticism in me.
Yeah.
And slowly away, the movie just so charming, it just chipped away all of it.
Yeah.
This is a pretty good movie. It's the characters are just where in a lesser movie they'd be very underwritten and very stereotypical of about 10,000 other movies, but they seem real here.
And
there's the deafness of the characters does sort of ground them, I think, and make them seem more realistic.
Yeah, but it's always just presented as one aspect of this family, right?
Right.
The movie isn't. The movie isn't really about them being deaf. It's really just about the weird dynamics of this weird and sort of very entertaining dynamics of this family, right? And of course it does put an extra layer of pressure on young Ruby, because she is kind of the linchpin. She's the sort of interpreter for her family to be able to get along.
It's a completely unfair amount of pressure. I mean,
well, sure, right, yes.
That's just what,
and
that's the central thing about this movie that just drives it. It's so essential that she help her family, but it's so unfair that she has to even.
And one of the things that I really love about this is that her parents, who are deaf, played by Mary Madeline and who's her husband, Troy Kotzer, right? Actual deaf Americans. It's so easy to present people with different abilities and disabilities in movies as sort of saints, right? As these people who, who sort of suffer nobly and everything. And they're not presented as that.
No, you're right.
They're not perfect. Particularly her mother is selfish, and they all take her for granted. They take Ruby's ability to translate for them for granted. Her mother only sees kind of Ruby's future in terms of her own future, and they all just assume that why would anybody want to leave this life of getting up at 3 a.m. to go fishing every morning in Gloucester, right?
Right.
And so it never even occurs to them that she might be leaving them, right? And so that's very typical of small town family life.
A thing this movie does that I thought was interesting is there's some scenes later on in the movie when the parents go see her do her musical act or whatever. And, obviously they're in this crowd and they're deaf, so they can't hear the music.
Yeah.
And there's one point where the movie kind of pulls back and shows kind of their point of view.
Right.
And they're far enough back to where they, can't really see, they can see her emotion or whatever, but they're far enough back to where they really can't totally see her emoting.
Right. Yeah.
And you kind of see for a second, wow, this is what it's like.
Right.
You kind of don't get music in a way.
Right. The audio drops out, and you see the whole crowd reacting to Ruby singing.
Yeah, that's what I'm going for. Is the fact that at first you kind of see that you kind of think the point they're making is, wow, they just can't. How are they ever going to identify with this? Mm-hmm. But then they look around and see how this music is affecting the other people in the crowd.
Right.
And sort of that's the way they can see it.
Right.
They can see that girl's crying because of their daughter's song. And
right.
The other people are moving to the music and being affected by it.
Right.
So, and that's universal. You can, that's something anybody can figure out. So
yeah,
I thought that was an interesting way to kind of show how in the long run, they see that they can't ask this of her.
Yeah, obviously there's a real irony in the fact that that Ruby's talent is singing, and her parents are deaf and can't appreciate that, right? Or at least can't appreciate it in the way that that it's meant to be appreciated. But that scene in particular sort of shows them being able to appreciate it at least secondhand, and being able to understand that, oh wait, she really this is more than a hobby. She really is talented at this. She can move people. Right. At the same time, there is something lonely about it that they are left out of this, right?
Sure.
That they're not going to be able to appreciate this, at least not in the way that that hearing people can, right?
Yeah, they've sort of created their own bubble that they live in, and the movie says that they don't socialize with,
Right.
How do you?
Right. Well, like with the Sound of Metal, the movie that we watched last year.
Right.
There's a much more casual presentation of them not just being deaf, but being part of deaf culture, right? Of them not seeing deafness as a disability,
right?
And thinking that there's nothing that they can't, they can't do just because of their deafness, right?
The brother in the family, I forget his name.
He is his name is Leo.
He ends up making a great
played by Daniel Durant.
He ends up making a great point that the news coverage, they're relying on Ruby to translate, when actually they should be doing their job and finding a way to communicate with these people.
Right.
It's going to be their job going forward to just find another way.
Right. I was reading about this, and one of the objections that has come from the deaf community about this, soft objections, I think it's gone over well, but one of the issues that has come up is that the way in which this presents this family is being so dependent on the hearing member to sort of translate everything, right?
Right.
And what's interesting about that is I don't take that as a commentary on deaf people generally. I just think that this particular family has gotten very complacent and lazy about and taken for granted the fact that Ruby is always going to be there for them.
Well, yeah,
right?
it's a skill they kind of had in their pocket, right?
Yeah,
it's part of that family.
Yeah, and that this family is going to this family is not coming apart because she's leaving, but this family is going to have to change, right? They're going to have to do things. They're going to have to figure out what they're going to do without her, and that's not going to be the end of the world. In fact, there might be lots of options. They just haven't pursue those options so far.
Absolutely.
Because where else would she be going aside from getting up every morning to go fishing, right? So we should say something about Emilia Jones. who plays a British actress who plays Ruby. To the credit of the movie, I think they don't, especially since she's British, they don't try a Gloucester accent. They don't try to make her give her sort of a clam chowder accent, right? And that's good. I didn't notice that until the end. That like, oh yeah, until I looked it up and like, oh, she's British. Okay, so
but they mention her having the accent of a deaf person at the
yeah, so. That's a good point.
So
right.
she would have never developed it anyway.
That's yeah. So we must say though that she did her own singing in this, and she has a beautiful voice.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
And her musical talent, her vocal talent is used to great effect in this movie. She works with a really passionate, sort of eccentric music teacher who takes over. The scenes with them, where he's trying to evoke the creative voice out of her, that anybody with a nice voice can just sort of sing a few bars of Happy Birthday, but he's trying to push her and get her to the point where no, she's really giving a performance, and the
right.
back and forth between that, where he's kind of agitating her and coming at her, and her ability to sing casually, sing sort of defensively, and then finally find a authentic sound, authentic engaging vocal performance, is just really, really well done.
Yeah, it is pretty well done, and it could have fallen into cliche pretty easily.
Yeah. There's so much in this movie.
She has she's got a raw quality about her because she's a newcomer to singing in any kind of organized way. So that's part of the story too, I guess, and that it's all in there together with it. Yeah.
I really adore this movie. Not only do I adore this movie, like I said, I mean, so often I adore a movie, like Nomadland or Pig or a movie like
right.
that. And I hesitate to sort of recommend those movies because those movies are not necessarily for everybody, and they're not necessarily an easy Saturday night. But this is a movie everybody should see. I really think this has really broad appeal.
Really accessible.
Yeah, it's really accessible.
So.
It has really broad appeal. It's very, very entertaining. See this movie right away.
I'm not going to argue with you. Let's see here. I'm trying to look through my notes, see if there's anything else worth mentioning. Oh, in the movie, Ruby has a Fisher-Price record player. And that was my entry level into playing record. Well, a lot of my mom's old records got playtime on a Fisher-Price record player. So that kind of warmed the heart a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of a strange soundtrack in this movie. Some of the musical choices were kind of strange, I thought.
Yeah, her father is big into rap music because he likes the beat.
You can feel it.
Yeah, you can feel it, right? So, wonderful movie. The director here is Cian Hayter, who's an American director. This is her second movie, and boy, do I look forward to future work from her. This is a home run.
Yep, I like this a lot. Not much else I can say about it. All right, well, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. All right, we're back on Cinema Spin for our randomly chosen movie. All right, I'll just get right into it. My Left Foot is a 1989 film directed by Jim Sheridan. My Left Foot is based on the memoir of the same title by Christy Brown. The film tells the tale of Christy Brown and his Dublin, Ireland upbringing, which was rather complicated by the fact that he was born with a severe form of cerebral palsy. Brown was raised by mostly supportive parents, alongside a gaggle of brothers and sisters who seemed not to have a grasp on his actual condition. Contrary to what the family believed, inside that body he struggled to control was a person, someone who had normal thoughts and feelings but lacked the ability to express them due to his affliction. Slowly, the family learns that there is intelligence inside of Christy, and the family celebrates this revelation. As Christy grows up, we see as he struggles to be heard, but through genuine determination develops skills that will allow him to better participate in the world around them. My Left Foot was the proverbial darling of the Oscars for 1989, as Daniel Day-Lewis won for Best Actor. He won the Best Actor Academy Award for playing Christy Brown. Brenda Fricker also won for Best Supporting Actress for portraying Brown's mother, Bridget, in the film. Although it did not win them, the movie was also nominated for most of the other major Academy Awards. Does this movie still hold up to those kind of accolades after nearly 35 years? That is the question I posed to my fine co-host, Jason.
Wait, that's me. So what we have with My Left Foot is we have a movie that's built around a central performance from Daniel Day-Lewis as Christy Brown. And he's in virtually every frame of this movie. So this is entirely his movie. Except for the flashbacks, right? I should say. And so how you take his performance is going to determine what you really think of this movie. And I think that performance in 1989 was taken as ingenious and entirely brave, right? Daniel Day-Lewis is totally committed.
Absolutely.
Famously committed. I mean, I should say infamously committed. He rather infamously stayed in character the whole time, to the point that he was in a wheelchair, and crew members had to carry him around the set, right? Much to the chagrin of the grips, right?
Right.
So he is committed all the way. He is totally, utterly convincing in this role. The hesitation that I have looking back on this now from a 2022 perspective is to point out the obvious. Daniel Day-Lewis is an able-bodied actor. Cerebral palsy is an affliction of the body, not of the mind. There surely were actors with cerebral palsy that would have been more than happy to play this role. I think obviously it goes without saying, if this movie were made in 2022, you would have to have an actor with cerebral palsy playing this character. And so, I don't know, with that modern sensibility in mind, looking back on it, and I know we chafe a little bit at sort of applying modern standards retroactively to movies like this from, 30 or 40 years ago. But at the same time, it does sort of make me look at his performance and wonder to what degree it's an imitation or an impression of
how different it is from how different is it from what Edward Norton does in the movie The Score, which we looked at earlier this year,
right?
Last year.
Yes, right.
It's in a more serious movie.
It's a much more serious movie, but
does that make it a better portrayal through modern eyes? I don't know.
Yeah, so I really struggle with that. Now, to Daniel Day-Lewis's credit, I mean, his commitment is such that eventually you kind of forget about that, right? I mean, he really does seem like he has cerebral palsy,
sure,
right? So the imitation, as it were, is utterly flawless. And so from there, so we're left to sort of judge to what degree this movie works as drama, to what degree we learn something about Christy Brown. Aside from this being a showcase for that central performance, which is problematic in its way, I don't know that there's that much more to this movie. The dynamic with the giant family, as it turns out, Christy Brown's mother had 22 children, 13 of them lived into adulthood, right? So, boy, that is an Irish Catholic family, right?
Yeah.
So even from a young age, he's sharing not just a room but a bed with 3 of his brothers or whatever, right? Yes, right, which is enough to make anybody lose the will to live. So I mean, the dynamic of the family is interesting. The way in which Christy Brown is able to insinuate his personality into and become part of the community. They show him sort of kind of playing soccer in a cart with some of his buddies. That's all interesting. But in terms of the bottom line is he becomes this celebrated writer and this celebrated artist. And I don't know that this movie has much of anything to say about his sort of creative process, except that he can use his left foot to paint pictures, right?
Yeah. my main note is this is a film with a number of great moments in it.
Yeah.
And it's got some obviously great performances. But does that add up to a great movie? I don't think it really does.
Yeah. I mean, again, there is a certain kind of Oscar-y movie that is just a showcase for a great performance. And boy, I think this
does lean more toward
example.
that. Yeah. There's not a great narrative flow here either. It's like just one scene after another.
Yeah.
And then you flash forward a couple times.
Well, I mean, it's a biopic, and this faces the same problem as all biopics, is that it because it's the story of a person's life, there's not a great, dramatic arc that you associate with fiction. And so it turns out to be a sort of a series of anecdotes. Right. And some of them are just a little more interesting and captivating than others.
Let's go back to your first premise about the problematic nature of this.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the question I have, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's differences in severity of cerebral palsy.
Right.
Maybe somebody with the most severe kind might not be capable of a performance.
Yeah.
If you have somebody has a lesser version of cerebral palsy playing somebody with a greater version, is that necessarily better than having somebody without it at all?
That's a really good question. And as able-bodied people, I don't think we should be talking about this.
Well, I mean, I think it may be fair that's for somebody else to decide.
Well, right. But yeah.
But I mean, I could see like sex developing, with a T at the end. I know I'm probably sects.
Yeah, right. Factions.
Yes,
right,
factions, if you will. I could see that developing, and they're saying, well, somebody would say, well, it's not fair that, this person who has a much easier go. I mean, that's
yeah.
It's kind of,
yeah. I think it would be a step in the right direction. The actor, God, his name escapes me, but the actor who played Walt Jr. on Breaking Bad,
right?
Cerebral palsy, right?
Yeah,
and it does raise a question. I mean, is it okay? Would it be okay for him?
Yeah, that's my question.
Who's mostly functional, right? Physically
to play someone who's more handicapped than they are.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
In the end, is there much difference?
Yeah,
it's not. I mean, somebody would have to determine the answer to that.
Right. I'm reminded. I was reading recently about a movie that came out earlier this year called Music, which was written and directed by the singer-songwriter Sia.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie, it's about a nonverbal autistic girl, right? And this movie got absolutely excoriated at every level by everybody who saw it. It's apparently bad filmmaking. The music isn't good, but most of all, the autistic community, right? The neurodivergent community pointed out that, well, what you have here is you have a young girl who doesn't have autism, isn't even on, is nowhere on the spectrum, playing autistic, right? In this way that seems very ableist, sort of Sia's imagination of what it's like to be autistic, when there are plenty of people who might sort of explain to her, what it might be to be autistic.
You remember a few years ago, this has been a while now, but there was a series on maybe Showtime or HBO called Temple Grandin.
About Temple Grandin, yeah.
Claire Danes played the role.
Yes, right.
Is that stuff?
Is that okay? Is it okay if Temple Grandin herself gives the approval? Right?
Yeah. That's the question.
The point being that when I'm reading some of this criticism of Sia's choice here not to cast an autistic girl in this role. And I'm thinking to myself, well, for all the other fault, I haven't seen this movie. This movie might be is probably terrible, I assume, and for lots of reasons. But it's not hard to imagine why Sia or any director might not want to cast somebody with severe autism,
right, in
an acting role, right? It's all acting is already a complicated enough issue, right? translating that to this, it's not hard to imagine why it is that maybe for practical purposes you might not want to cast somebody who has cerebral palsy as seriously as the character does.
I think it's sort of an interesting modern question to talk about.
It definitely is.
I mean, would we say that a male shouldn't play a female in a movie?
I think we definitely should say that. Yes, I think we definitely.
I mean, we had Kate Blanchett play Bob Dylan in a movie a couple years ago. What the hell is that called?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was I'm Not There.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's okay. For stylistic reasons, what you absolutely can't have is you can't have any more a straight person, a non-transgender person play, a male actor play a transgender woman, right? Or a transgender man for that, for that matter, right? You have to, and now it's reasonable to ask, especially when we're parsing these very, these rules, we're asking, well, how, if you're going to play a character with severe cerebral palsy, how severe does the actor's cerebral palsy have to be?
My question.
Right. Well, right. And who makes these rules? And the answer is nobody.
Yeah, I'm not saying I have the answer or I really have an opinion on it.
Well, and I think the industry doesn't have the answers. I think the industry is making this up as they go along and kind of just sort of checking Twitter once in a while.
This is
what Twitter makes of their casting.
My left foot is 89, which is only a few years removed from something as offensive as Soul Band.
Soul Man?
Yeah, I mean, so it's
well, blackface. I think that's it.
we all agree that's probably not a great idea,
right?
But I mean, you're talking about the same era, so I'm sure they never considered.
No. At the time, this was this was not even a consideration. But
I mean, it's like. In the end, we are talking about the act of acting, and it is portraying somebody that is not you, by definition.
Right.
So, it's somewhat problematic to put limitations on that.
Yeah. I mean, the counter argument.
I mean, is it? Can I not play an asshole now because I really don't? I've never lived in an asshole's shoes. I mean, maybe I have.
You don't suffer.
Maybe
from
personally, Matt Ulrich can, but
you don't suffer from chronic asshole disease.
Right.
Yeah, I think the argument is more along the lines of this, that, when just stick with the current example, when Daniel Day-Lewis plays somebody with severe cerebral palsy, he's taking a role away from an actor with cerebral palsy who can't exactly play Daniel Plainview or one of the other, can't exactly go out for other roles and so, as much as possible, those rules.
Let me take it a step further and ask you this question: if the answer to this question ends up being, well, because it's problematic, we just won't make movies about these people anymore. Yeah, is that a good solution either? I mean,
I think that's a great question.
When I say these people, I mean people that it's not easy to portray.
Those people. No, I want, and that's a great question with regard to My Left Foot. Is that if Jim Sheridan and his producers had a modern sensibility and said, no, we need to go out and find an actor, some obscure actor with cerebral palsy to play this role. I mean, this movie wouldn't have gotten made, right?
Somebody would say it's just too hard.
Yeah, well, and you need elements. You need a named actor to sort of draw in.
Right, it's going to be kind of the
to put it together. I mean, the nature of producing a movie means you have to sign this act, a big, a named actor to play a certain role, and then that gets the ball rolling.
And there are people who put money forward in hopes of making money on every level of movie making.
Well, and then it does raise the question for, the cerebral palsy community. Like, well, what's a better world? A world where Daniel Day-Lewis plays Christy Brown in My Left Foot, or a world where there is no My Left Foot, right?
Yeah,
and I don't know the answer to that one.
I don't either. It's probably not for us to determine, I guess.
Right.
But,
yes.
It's an interesting
thing.
Yes.
So. Yeah.
I didn't buy. This is not a fun movie to watch by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
There's some scenes that are hard to watch because it's just, and it's not his affliction. It's the fact that his character gets pretty ugly in some cases.
Yeah, and that's one of the good things about. I think one of the daring and interesting things about that character is, Christy Brown is not presented as a sweet, lovable guy.
Yeah, just because he has this, it doesn't make him a perfect.
He's
person.
not a saint, right? In the same way that we talked earlier about how there's this with Marley Matlin in Coda, there's this tendency to make the disabled be these sort of suffering, virtuous saints. Christy Brown in this movie is not that guy.
No, he isn't.
He struggles with a lot. Obviously, he struggles with a huge amount, but he's very abusive to the people around him, and he's very he really lets his uglier emotions fly.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of that is, I think, somewhat excusable in just the effort it takes him to do everything.
Yes, and we're shown one of the things that make this movie hard is that every little thing that he does takes so much effort.
Yeah,
and that's to Jim Sheridan, the director's. It's a compliment to him that he really puts us in how much.
He takes the time to do it too. Yeah,
to show us
the scene when the little boy goes downstairs to check on his mom, probably for the first time on his own.
Yeah,
when he's just got to basically claw his way down the stairs, and it's just the relentlessness about it is
right.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
There's moments in this where I thought, that's a great moment, but I just didn't think it added up to a great movie, and maybe it never did. I mean, it didn't win Best Picture, right? It just got nominated.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe some of these flaws were seen, back then.
Yeah, I do want to compliment this movie though for, despite the fact that it's a biopic and therefore it consists mostly of these anecdotes. There is a bit of a character arc for him. He starts out as this a very sort of resentful kind of charity case, right? And sort of bit by bit, he begins to assert himself, sometimes to his detriment, because the personality he's asserting sometimes is quite obnoxious, right?
Right.
But eventually he does kind of bit by bit sort of achieve this position of kind of a self-possessed artist.
Well, I mean, you think speaking to his demeanor, I mean, you think about how the average person is when they're really under a lot of stress and really put to the test. It's not our best moments sometimes. And
oh, sure. Yeah.
He's got a lot just to get through a day.
Yes.
So that,
yeah.
Until you walk a mile in those shoes, I guess it's easy to cast aspersions at it. But
yes.
He does. There's some scenes that are just the one in the restaurant is particularly particularly ugly.
Yes, right, where he kind of throws a fit because a woman that that has been working with him sort of as a teacher, she's marrying someone else.
Maybe for the first time he feels kind of unbridled jealousy and has no idea how to deal with it.
Yeah, right.
So
a couple more things. Most of this movie belongs to, of course, Daniel Day-Lewis, but in flashbacks he's played by Hugh O'Connor as a young man. And that kid does an extraordinary job.
He does. I wrote it down myself.
Yeah.
I wonder what came first.
Daniel Day-Lewis's performance or Hugh O'Connor's?
You're right.
Yeah.
I just...
it's sort of a shame that Hugh O'Connor didn't get some Oscar buzz, right? Because what a fantastic performance.
No, I totally agree.
Finally, boy, the Irish know how to have a bar fight. There is a...
Windows are not safe.
No. There's one of the best bar fights in this movie. I think in the annals of movie bar fights, this one takes the cake, right? First of all, it starts out with Christy Brown, this guy sort of... it's right after the father dies, and then somebody at the bar insults the father, and Christy Brown confronts him, right? And the guy's like, "What are you gonna do?" And kicks the stein right out of his hand, right? And then very quickly it descends into old lady punching old lady, right? Like,
Sides were quickly chosen in that bar fight.
Yes. So, this. I mean, this is everything you would think a bar fight in Dublin would be like. Yeah,
Absolutely.
So I dug that scene. So.
Yeah, I had the same thoughts. All right, let's look towards our next episode, which will feature a new movie again. I hate to beat the dead horse again. We do not exactly know what it's going to be yet.
We do not know what the next new movie is going to be, but we are about to find out.
We're about to find out what the random movie is.
Random movie is.
The Fickle Finger of Fate. All right, we've got 1965's The Cincinnati Kid.
Oh, The Cincinnati Kid with Steve McQueen.
Yeah, that's a card-playing movie?
Yes, I think he's a poker player in that.
Interesting.
And I bet he's cool.
Well,
I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, I bet that Steve McQueen is
he
cool.
accidentally exudes cool sometimes.
Right. Right? Yeah.
Depending on the movie.
Yeah. Even through a turtleneck.
Yes, especially through a turtleneck. So that'll be the show. A movie to be named later and The Cincinnati Kid. So
Okay.
Tune in next week, and we'll be right back at you with a brand new episode. Thank you for listening.
Goodbye, everybody.